Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming back to another episode of our podcast, A While Back. Once again, we have an incredible group of young ladies and young men here today.
Raise your hand.
The title is, once again, Together Again. We have all the siblings. Unfortunately, Aunt Agnes and Uncle Paul were not able to join us, but we do have all the siblings back from the previous episode, and we're going to go into more detail on some of the other questions. I'm not going to have everybody introduce themselves because they did it in a previous episode, but I am going to tell you who we have here in front of us today. On the far right corner, we have Uncle Henry. We have Aunt Marianne. We have Aunt Beatrice. We have Aunt Pauline. And we have my dad, Norbert. So everybody is here again today. We're going to go through some more questions. And it's the exact same concept that we just did. So I think everybody feels more than comfortable now. All right, so this one is very important to the family, especially because we're going to be talking about family history. And Aunt Marianne has some incredible documents at her disposal. And she's by far the historian, it sounds like, in the family. So we're going to let Aunt Marianne answer the first question, and everybody will follow after that. So Aunt Marianne, what do you know about our family history?
Well, I know that Mother and Daddy met. Mother came from Gonzales, and my daddy was a Shiner boy. But he had a brother. No, he had two sisters that married Mom's brothers. So they really didn't. They had weddings at the homes and house dances and all this good stuff. And so at the second wedding, they kind of fell in love, I think. So then they started going together, and Mom's little brother would always go with him. His name was Anton, because he would be the chaperone, because Mom's parents were very strict.
Wow.
Yes, I remember those grandparents very strict. But anyhow, so they dated for 6 months, and Dad proposed, and they married on Armistice Day, 11/11/1930, and they lived in Coconut. And then Dad's mother got very ill, and so Grandpa must have asked him to move in with them, and they moved in with my grandpa and grandma, which is Paul and Maria Pekar also. But they moved in, and Mother was pregnant. My mother was pregnant with my oldest brother, Adolf, and so they moved in and stayed with them until 1936. But in 1933, grandmother got very ill with diabetes, and she died at the age of 66.
Right.
Yeah, that was in 1933 that she passed. So then Mom and Dad moved to a place at Fishner's, and we lived there. They rented the land, and that's where some of the children were born. And then later, they moved just a little distance on a hill, and again farming, and more children were born. They were all born, except I think then in 1945, the farm where they lived, my grandparents, my dad bought it, and Mother, in 1945, and of course a lot more of my siblings were born on that place. But they farmed, but that place was only 49 acres, so Daddy leased out land from two different people, and so there was always work. And my daddy he bought him a Rooster Chevrolet before he married, and he paid for it. He paid he had installment plans of $20 a month, and he was so happy when he paid it out. But so that's, I'm gonna let some of the other siblings take over. I think they're
You got us to the right age.
Yeah,
want me to keep on going?
Yes, please, because you have all the information.
history.
Yes.
Mention me in there, at least.
Okay. Well, like I said, then we lived on that place. All of Dad's siblings agreed that he buys the place, and we bought it. They bought it, and it was kind of tough. But like I said, we also had to work help out. You know, the older ones. We picked cotton and did. Everybody did from the oldest, and as the oldest left the house, and the other ones came in. The 9 children.
Right.
You know, so we did farming, and we planted anything that you could make money at. Picking pecans for a Mr. Turk on the river bottom,
Wow.
and all that stuff, and then in 1975, the house burned down. It was an electrical thing, and I don't
Yes.
know if I'm saying it at the right time, but there was a new the Mr. Patek, this Patek grocery store. They had a house, and he said, "Paul and Mary, y'all can have the house if you haven't moved." So they had moved, and all of the siblings came and helped, and we made a nice home for them again. But it never was the same, because the first house was built with some of the lumber from the house that had been tore down, and used in the house that was built in '49. And there were some very good crop years that I think Dad had mentioned it in one of the podcasts. I remember him saying that Daddy bought a tractor, and then he also, was it the following year, he bought a car, a brand new Mercury car.
49 tractor, 50 Mercury.
And as the children were, you know, Henry was born in,
You already
Right.
got me from
Yeah, but
53 to 75. That's pretty good age already.
no, you were born in
53.
53.
53, yes. So then after that, you know, Daddy, we did all the work. We had 50 bales, but when we had the 50 bales that time, some of the relatives came in to help. But Daddy paid them just like anybody else. And I know my neighbor wanted to come pick, and you know, we made, was it 40 bales? 40 bales that
Yeah,
year.
45.
Oh, that was a lot of work though.
Mhm.
And can you imagine the work that
Did
it
we
was?
pick or pulling on?
Well,
Picking.
it was
Picking.
In those days,
it
it
was
was all
picking at
picking.
that
All
time.
picking?
And we talked about Mama
She
picking,
was
Yeah.
picking
but
on,
Mama had to
yes.
pick for the sample because
Yeah.
Mama picked where she didn't have
Clean.
a little bitty leaf in there. She absolutely
Yes.
hers was, and so Daddy would use that as a sample because you had to have a sample, and that's how you got paid for the cotton. Then by
Right.
the pound was the sample.
So he wanted to make sure it was all cleaned out
Yes.
before
Oh,
he
it
sent the
was
sample.
clean.
Right.
Daddy was a picker that he could pick a lot of pounds, so like close to
Oh,
500.
my
But
gosh,
his
yes.
his pick was leaves and everything in it.
Oh,
My
he was-
mother,
he was like,
but it
We
was
wouldn't
so
dare leave a little bitty
No, you couldn't leave one
one little bitty snub in that thing when you pick
Yeah,
that cotton,
exactly.
because he
Oh,
coming.
yes.
That's like when you chop cotton, you better not chop out a cotton that wasn't supposed to be, because then you planted it back, because Daddy would go and look and there was that wilted cotton, you know.
So that was sort of interesting to me, Marianne. You said that we moved to the place where we were at now. All of us were late.
45.
45.
Uh-huh.
So Pauline and I were still born in Gonzales County at that
Yeah,
time.
That's
We were born.
correct.
And Beatrice must have been the first one that was born on the place where we're at.
I have
Yes.
only one recollection that I lived in that house that we lived on, and that was I touched the wood stove, and I'm telling you, I had a big sore, and I'll never forget. I mean, it was there for a long time.
Mm.
So you brought up something, Marianne, that I wasn't aware of. So you said that Grandpa's sisters married two of Grandma's brothers?
Yes.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
His sister Teresa married John Molesky,
Oh,
and Beatrice married Paul.
Right.
And my mother and daddy were very close to Paul and Beatrice, because Paul and Beatrice were all of our children's.
mhm.
They were our godparents,
Yeah.
and we were there helping the family, Uncle Paul and Aunt Beatrice, and all of a sudden their oldest came running. We were playing with cars, soda water bottles, and
Soda
stuff
water,
like that.
yeah.
We didn't have any toys like
No,
kids have now.
We made our
And we made our own, and it was fun. And being with cousins was fun. And the oldest daughter of our godparents, Paul and Beatrice, came running, and she said, "I need the bucket of water Daddy passed out, and oh, we were so what? And you know, she ran through stubbles. What the men were doing hay, and the others were chopping. The ladies were chopping cotton for the second time. You know,
Wow.
And I can't remember if he passed away on the place or if they took him in to the hospital, but I know he died suddenly.
Oh wow.
And
Hmm.
he was such a good man. He died at age 33.
That young.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my
That
goodness.
was
At
Paul.
age 33, yes.
Yeah.
And then I know, and Beatrice and the children, they had 6 children. They came to live with us for a little while. And Daddy would train the oldest daughter that brought the news how to cultivate with the team.
Mhm.
And, you know, she did it.
Really?
And there was no SSI or no welfare that
No.
my aunt could get for her 6 children. Just think.
Wow.
And I'm getting off our deal, but it's important because that was Dad's sister and her husband that passed, my daddy's. And anyhow, so we kept on going, and like I said, Daddy was the youngest, so he had nieces and nephews that treated him like he was there. One of them, my cousins, told me when I'd go visit him, he would always tell me, Marianne, you don't know how your daddy was a special person. When we told them to come for company, which that was Daddy's sister and
Mhm.
her husband, Joe and Mary, those kids couldn't wait for my grandpa and grandma to come because Uncle Paul, he called him Uncle Paul, my dad,
Right.
would play with them. So that's where he had that deal of being an athlete. He'd play with those kids and he stayed with them while his sisters could go and work in the fields.
Right.
And you know, they all knew how to work. They were workers, you know. And there were some tragedies. Then one of Dad's sister's husband also was hunting, and he went through the fence, and he had the gun, and the gun was loaded, and it went off, and it killed him. That was my daddy's brother-in-law.
Oh, that's sad.
But remember, Marianne, when Aunt Bessie was living in that house, and Daddy we could see her house
Yes,
way across town, and her house was on blocks.
yes,
And if it was a big wind that came, well, her house got blown off the
Oh,
block.
my goodness.
yes.
And the minute Daddy saw that the storm was over, he'd look and he'd say, Bessie's house is off. And he'd go and they would lift it back up
Right.
and put it
And
on
put
the
the blocks
blocks.
back
Yeah.
in. Wow.
Oh, he had a great admiration for his sisters, you know, and they, you know, he was just that kind of a person,
Wow.
always helping them, and all of that family is all deceased now. I think about that so many times. And then when we were living there, this oldest daughter was married just a little bit below that. Were y'all in the field? I was in the field. We were doing the front patch cotton, and here comes Bill in the morning to go to town. And then later that evening, we had heard that he was on the tractor and he had a cerebral hemorrhage and he passed away.
Right.
Right.
So, you know, that same girl went through
That was
bad
Bill's uncle.
again.
And then the son died at 33,
Yeah,
Paul, the
Paul.
youngest son,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
she was
Oh,
left a
yes.
widow with
Right.
what, 4 children?
5 boys.
Oh, my
boys.
goodness.
And then another, like Aunt Bessie's daughter, her grandson, he died at 33 also.
That
With
a heart
attack or
33 was
whatever.
not good.
A heart attack at 33?
Yeah.
All of them.
Oh,
They-
all of them.
goodness.
I don't know.
It
They
was-
all
Well,
had
I think
cerebral
my
Like-
godfather, they called it a cerebral hemorrhage or
Mhm.
something, maybe that,
maybe.
or an aneurysm, because it was. But I really think it was a heart attack
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
because
it was like
because the heart, you know, strokes were a little, you know, high blood pressure was what
Right.
they didn't take care of, I guess.
Right.
You know,
Mm.
in those days you didn't go to the doctors like you do now
No.
to control stuff.
Right.
But you know, all the siblings always, and when my brother Adolf went to the military, oh my God, Mother and Daddy gave him a party, a farewell party, and we cried. All of us cried. That wasn't a party. And then when Norbert left, we were kind of used to it already, but we missed him too.
Right.
We were a close knit kids,
Family.
you know, family.
And then
And we-
Paul,
Yeah, and then Paul left,
Had to
and
go
he
to
got
Vietnam.
wounded, and oh
he
my
went to
goodness.
Vietnam, and twice the people came and told. I mean, the army people,
Yeah.
because he
Yes.
got 2 purple.
Yes.
Actually, he should have had 2 purple hearts.
Yeah.
I knew he had one because Uncle Paul had told me that story.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But wasn't you the first one to leave, Marianne, that time
Yes.
going to San Antonio? I'll
To the
never
beauty
forget. I'll
school.
never forget that
Oh,
when
yeah.
you left. Everybody was just hugging Marianne and crying. She was going all the way to San
San
Antonio,
Antonio.
Texas.
Beauty college. Yeah.
Beauty college. I'll never forget that.
Yes.
And the thing about that was that we were so worried about you, but you had a good old couple or someone
Yes,
to
I
stay with
lived
down
with
there.
a family that I took care of their son
Right.
that was 6 years old, and they paid. I had free room and board, and
Oh.
mother and daddy. And I don't know if y'all came to see me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
we
y'all came to
see
that Bergman's.
Yeah,
Their name was.
yeah,
Well, I
yeah,
shouldn't
we did.
mention the name, but it was Ellie and Eleanor, Eli and Eleanor, and later they had a daughter, and you know. But I stayed there 7 months, and the man of the house, he would I would take the bus to work to the college, but then later he found out that he could take me in his truck, and he had an office not far from the beauty college, and he would tell me some stories. I would tell him things that he was born in New York, and he didn't know where eggs came from. I told him, you know, it was a fowl, a chicken that laid the egg.
Right.
He said, I ain't never eaten that egg.
I hope you didn't tell him rooster.
No, I didn't.
He turned
Well,
into a
He
vegetarian.
went
Huh?
through he wanted to know everything.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. And mother would make him kolaches and bring them over, and Miss Eleanor said, Marianne, you can have some of these for lunch. I never saw a kolache.
Really?
She would have bridge parties, and they would, you know,
Oh.
she would serve it
Serve it.
while I was gone. But that was okay. They were good to me.
So what year was that you
That
left?
was in 1951, 53.
53.
That's the year I was born.
I graduated. I wasn't at home
Ada
when he
went
was
to the.
born.
Well, then you left after Ada. Ada went to the service in
In
what
52.
51?
Yes,
or
51
52?
or 52.
Yeah, I left after. Yeah, because I graduated in May and I went to college in June of 53.
Oh,
And that's one
I
thing
kept
we have.
thinking that you went
Yeah.
earlier than
Mhm.
Ada, but not. No.
That's
Right.
one thing we have to say about mom and daddy. When you got out of high school,
Mm.
you could go do
Yeah.
Right,
whatever
exactly
you wanted.
what you needed.
Whatever
They-
you knew.
They let you do whatever.
That's outstanding.
So
Well, the history that you gave is outstanding. You're also, later on, we're going to also have you read some of the documents that literally Grandpa and Grandma had spoken to you about, and you were able to record everything.
uh-huh.
So that will come later on. But
Okay.
thank you for that, because that brief history was phenomenal.
and this that I'm gonna read came from mom's and dad's mouth.
Exactly. That's why it's going to be so interesting, because I can't wait.
Because I
to
would
read that.
take notes, and then I would you know, go home and type it. And I had a typewriter at home.
Right.
So type it.
So did anyone else have any stories that you remember Grandpa or Grandma talking about from the family origin? Anything of that nature as well?
The only thing that I can say is, that daddy or mother told me that actually my grandpa, that he was an orphan and that he used to tend sheep, and that he lived in the barn, but I don't think anybody else remembers it or,
And Grandpa's told you that?
yeah.
Your dad?
But Grandpa would
Yeah.
tell us a lot of stories. He would tell us he would call it the old country.
Yeah.
Where,
Oh,
you know,
he
they
called
had-
it the old country.
Yeah, where there was like witchcraft, and he would tell us about this
Yeah.
one bird that come and would
Yeah.
unlock the door, and
Ah.
then, it would take the key from a
Right.
certain place and come and unlock the door
Right.
and this and that, He told us stories, so you don't know, but I mean, I don't think anybody knows too much about Mama's and, about Grandpa's
Wow.
family, parents.
No.
Okay, so
But she said about Tony taking care of, who did you say?
He would go with
Chaperone
mother and
for
daddy.
Mama
and
He was,
Daddy.
he was chaperoning for Mama and Daddy.
Yes.
Tony was a little guy that when he took his driver's license, he had to take it orally, and they asked him, what do you do when you go by the hospital? And he told them, speed up and blow the horn.
I thought.
And then when he would be bringing grandma to the house, he would, well, Pokrabex, he liked his beer. And you could give him 2 beers and he would sit there all day long and drink on that one beer. He just savored it. But he would tell grandma at Pokrabex when they'd be coming close to it from Gonzales, he'd
Pull
say,
over, Mom.
no, he'd say, Mama, what kind of soda water do you want? And she said, I don't want no soda water. He told her, I ain't asking you if you want a soda water. I said, what kind do you want? Because he had to stop
He
and
had
buy
to
my
go
beer.
in, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had a plan.
He had a plan.
All right, so I'm going to move on to one of the next questions after this. So, and I'm going to lead off with you, Uncle Henry, but I didn't realize this, but you said that you first started out speaking Czech, correct?
Right.
Okay.
I started out when I was a baby because that's all I heard.
That's all you heard around the house. So Czech was your first language, but at what
Yeah.
point in time did you
It
learn to
had
speak
to be,
English?
or else I couldn't talk. Huh?
Yeah. What point in time did you learn to speak English?
After I quit talking Czech.
Have you quit talking Czech? Yeah.
No, I would say about 63 maybe. Well, no, it would be earlier than that. 53, maybe 7 years after I was
7 years old or so? Okay.
Well, I
good.
had to learn English.
All right.
I didn't have no choice.
So, Dad, at what point in time did you stop speaking Czech? Did you learn English?
Well, I never stopped speaking Czech. I still can speak Czech today, but you're asking me what time I learned to
Speak English?
speak English. It was the first grade when I went into first grade. And I mentioned that earlier. I had Sister Cecilia. She was Czech, and she really helped me along the first year.
Okay.
And after the first year, I could speak English.
So, Beatrice, do you remember when you were able to just strictly go speak English?
Probably when I was, maybe in first grade.
First grade, you learned stuff. Good.
Yes.
So, do y'all feel comfortable speaking Czech to this day, too? Everybody?
I can understand it better than I can talk it.
It's
Really?
hard.
I forgot a lot. I mean, I used to could speak it.
I can always understand it, but I can't talk it. That
Oh, really?
Yes.
So, Aunt Pauline, when did you start to learn English?
The same time.
The
But
same time?
I got to tell you that I was in first grade 2 times. And I still graduated at 18.
Uh-huh.
But I wanted to go to school, so Mama let me go to school. They let me go to school. And I went to school for about 2 weeks. And Sister slapped my hand. That was it. I wasn't going to school no more. I'm not kidding you.
Oh, wow.
Then I
You didn't hit
started
her
the
back,
next
did
year. But I wasn't but 5 years old when I started.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So, Aunt Marianne, when did you start just speaking English?
I think it was also in school.
Yeah.
It
Uh-huh.
had to be about the same
because
time.
Sister Angela was
That was my teacher.
that was my children's teacher. I don't even remember. I went to Coconut. Adolph and I were the only two that went to
yeah.
Coconut
Uh-huh.
school.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the others, when we moved to the Ehlers place, that was not far. We went to Menger School, and that was also a country school with 2 rooms and all the grades put together.
Oh, really?
And you know what? We learned a lot. I wasn't behind when I went to the school that I graduated from. It was a Christian school.
That's outstanding. So, you, Dad, Aunt Pauline, I'm assuming, too, did y'all all literally learn from a nun that had taught each of you English?
Yes.
Yes.
So, all of y'all did?
Basically,
Yeah,
from the kids, you kind of learn,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
everybody
Right.
is talking. But a lot of people were talking Czech too, but, you just kind of transition.
That is
You
outstanding.
didn't even know that,
Now, what I wanted to know, Marianne, when you and Adolph first started going to school, did y'all have a car to go to school on, or did y'all ride a horse, or what?
No, to
Buggy?
Menger, Daddy would take us we walked to Spahns,
Oh, y'all
and
walked.
Adolph Spahn
Okay.
would have to have a car, and we would drive to Coconut School because it was a little farther. But
Oh.
we could, some days that it was nice, we even walked to the Spahns because that wasn't very far.
Oh.
And then we had the car. He just passed away not too terribly long ago. Raymond and
I saw
Adolph
that.
Spahn.
yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah, they
Okay.
were
During COVID, yeah.
yeah.
So you're gonna have to walk through the snow 10 miles or 15 miles to get to school. Like
No,
all
no,
them
but
horror stories I heard, huh?
right. No, then when we moved to Manger, we walked again. And
Oh,
it was
you did?
black land, remember? And I don't know how many times after a rain that we had a neighbor, Winkower. I shouldn't mention the last name. I'm sorry. But anyhow, he had I should say a neighbor, and he had chains for his vehicle,
Oh,
and he
Oh.
could go to Beatrice's store.
uh-huh.
It was a store. Daddy was always out of coffee and tobacco, and the staples, that would get, because we had everything else. And one day we went to, it was muddy. We couldn't have driven. But I remember Daddy gave us 50 cents, and Adolph and I went. I don't know if Agnes went too. And we stopped at the creek bridge and looked at the fish, and Adolph had that money in his pocket, and a 50-cent piece fell in the water. And oh my goodness, he laid down on that bridge, and we held him so he don't fall. He got that 50-cent piece out of that water, which we had to pay for the groceries.
Right. Oh my goodness. So now for this one, because I'm going to ask each of you, because you each have individual perspectives, okay? But I'm going to lead off with you, Uncle Henry. So, because you grew up on the farm at a different time frame than everybody else.
Mhm.
So what was a typical day like starting out for you on the farm? Would Grandpa come wake you up? Grandma, what was it like each day on the farm?
Well, they would have to come wake up, and then I'll probably go do my chores. I had to do chores for. Then eventually I would wind up in a cornfield picking cotton. But then, like Pauline said earlier, Mama would bring us lunch, egg sandwiches. That was with homemade bread. Ah, damn, we wasn't having, boy. I wasn't. I couldn't wait. I really didn't do too much work. I was just waiting for the sandwich. I let them pretty much do the work. I stayed underneath the trailer where it was nice and cool. But anyway, we just did that, and pretty much that's it. When the day ended, that was late at night. We would go home, and sometimes Daddy would take us to Benish's to get a soda water and ice cream in it. Or soda water and cookies, I think it was that time. And then we'd go home and just wait for the next day to come again.
All right. Well, good. So, Aunt Marianne, what was a typical day like for you on the farm? How would it start and end?
Well, basically, when there were school days, you went to school, and after school, you came home, and you had your clothes laid out for you to go into the field. Of course, winter was, not so bad, but spring, there was always something to do in the field.
I'll bet, right?
You had to either, do something, pick eggs, and the boys usually did the hogs. I don't think I ever remember slopping the hogs. But, so it was just, if it was field work, you went to the field, and you came home at noon, ate your meal, rested a little bit, went back in the field, and then picked or chopped or whatever till you could see, as long as daylight.
Right.
And then you came home and cleaned up. There wasn't no beautiful bathtubs. You had to use, that was the almost primitive years. You had to use a tub to clean up in.
Right.
And it was warmed up water from the heaters and stuff like that. But typical day that's what it was.
Yeah, because your typical day was almost completely different than what maybe Uncle Henry had because of the age gap.
Yes.
And
Yes,
you had a lot of responsibility too.
Yeah, we had a lot of, and then when I was old enough, I remember I was not old at all, but Mother would let me bake the bread. She would tell me how to bake it, and while she would go in the field and stay all day. And I remember one time I was in charge of the little ones, and that was at Ayler's place. So I don't know who was. Let's see, I guess B wasn't there. It must have been Norbert, Pauline, and
Agnes.
Agnes, yeah. And Daddy said, don't do this and don't do that, and be careful and don't do that. And I got all the little ones in the water trough. They begged me to do it, and so they all were in the tub, in the water trough, not a tub, water trough, where the cows with the animals drank the water.
Exactly.
And here comes Daddy looking for something. And I know he just checking on me, and oh my goodness, did I get it that time? I really did. You know, he said, don't you know that if they would have drowned, what could have happened?
Right.
And another time on that place again, we had a tea party, and I used all the spices. There was cinnamon and some sugar and stuff, and I mixed it with whatever she cooked with. And Daddy came home again and caught me, and I got it again. So I remember 2 hard whippings. I think I ran into the corn patch that, like Pauline said, and I remember that I was there until dark, and Daddy was yelling, "Marianne, come home! I ain't gonna whip you no more. Come home! Where are you at?" And I heard him, so I crawled back to the house. And he said, "Well, don't ever do that again." You know,
Right.
so I didn't get a spanking that time. But
Oh, that was good.
yeah, but
Did you say, "Are you gonna whip us"?
yeah, oh yeah, that's what I. No, he told me he was worried about me. He called me and he said he was calling out to me. Like I said, I ain't gonna whip you no more.
Right.
Yeah, he always called us.
Yeah, he did.
So, Aunt Beatrice, same question. So, what was it like for you on the farm? How would the day start? How would it end?
Well, I would get up in the morning and go to school, you know, and then would come home like they said, and you know, go to the fields.
Right.
And yes, and I remember at home also about our Christmas tree. We had a tree, you know, just a plain cedar tree,
Mhm.
and we'd always, you know, say the rosary first, and then we would have to sing Czech songs.
Right.
You know? So yeah, but I think they kind of all, you know, summered it up.
Well, that was good. All right,
Yeah.
outstanding. So, Aunt Pauline, what would the day start out for you, and how would it end for you as well?
Same way with
Same
going
way?
to school and everything. But
Mhm.
I got to tell you, when we came home from school,
Uh-huh.
we would go to the smokehouse and get us either a piece of sausage or a piece of ham or bacon that was
Yeah.
smoked, and I would eat garlic. I cannot imagine what I smelled like when I ate that garlic. I'm not kidding you. I loved garlic
hated
and mustard
garlic.
and that thing. And that was
Really?
homemade. Yes, oh my goodness. And I tried eating it the other day and I just can't eat it raw no more. But I did. I loved garlic.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I mean, we all kind of helped. I remember, you know, taking stacks off and
Right.
feeding the cows with and grinding the corn and feeding the
Mhm.
chickens. And when Daddy would milk a cow, well, he'd give you the bucket at night and he'd tell you to go put it in the water trough, but you only a certain way, and you had to take a spoon and you had to turn the milk so that it would cool off so you could drink it. But I never would drink it. I'd have to boil mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it wasn't. I didn't like the taste of the raw milk.
Wow. All right, Dad. So, what was the life like on a typical day for you, starting out and ending on the farm?
Well, like I said it earlier, I'd get up and that was when I was going to school already. I would milk the cows and stuff because we sold milk and stuff at that time. But getting back to this, living on the farm, I remember when we used to go over there to that farm where we farmed this place, and we used to stop at that herder store.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And we used to always drink this soda water. And what they had at that time, they had a RC upper 10 and a barge root beer and a Pepsi. Of course, they had Coke and they had 7-Up, but I don't think anybody drank Coke or 7-Up. Those bottles
yeah.
were just too little. So everybody drank that upper 10
That's right.
and RC and barge root beer, either Pepsi. And then Daddy would, most of the time, at that time, Mama wouldn't come along and it was too far for her to come to where we were. Because we'd go it was about 6-7 miles from the house.
Mhm.
So Daddy would buy this salami, and that's what we'd eat for lunch,
Wow.
salami and bread.
That is good. All right, outstanding. All right, so we're going to come to the end of this episode. Everybody, once again, did a phenomenal job. Outstanding. We're going to be coming back later on, and we're going to do another episode, and we're going to cover some more of the other questions that y'all have on y'all's list there. But I want to thank everybody because y'all did a great job on this episode. Dad, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Let me tell you something else.
Love that.